We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode 99 of Vikings Uncensored. We are well away from the century mark. Hard to believe a couple years ago you got two fourth-rate hack podcasters getting together. Now we've done almost 100 episodes, so time flies.
Sure does.
So we got a little bit of news stuff we'll talk about this week. Then, of course, we have the positional breakdowns this week, looking at the wide receivers. We'll have our mock draft roundup again coming up after a while, and also another one of Brunswick's bests to finish off the show. So without further ado, we'll start off with a little bit of sad news. Former Vikings owner Red McCombs passed away this week at the age of 95 years old.
Wow.
Of course, McCombs also, was NBA owner and founder and stuff with San Antonio. His tenure with as Vikings owner was not necessarily the best in the world, but still, our condolences go out to the McCombs family. Rest in peace, Red.
Absolutely.
A couple non-Vikings related news items here. Eric Bieniemy finally gets his chance to prove that he can do things on his own without Andy Reid, as he is the new offensive coordinator with the Washington Commanders.
Yeah, he gets to build his own little group over there and kind of run things the way he wants to run things, and I wish him the best. So
and I'm interested to see if he can if he can actually do it on his own, or if it was Reid. But we'll find out now.
Yeah.
No, granted, Washington's quarterback situation not necessarily the best of the world. The way they're looking right now, Sam Howell might be their starter.
It's got a good team there, though. I just got to find. It's kind of like us here. You just got to find that guy that can.
Yeah, their defense is very good. The offense questionable, so be interesting to see how they make that work. Then some NFC North news. Rumors been floating around all week long from the last. Probably a week to 10 days, that the Packers are absolutely done with Aaron Rodgers. They're sick and tired of his antics, and they're ready to move on. Of course, Rodgers has spent the last several days in his darkness retreat that he was supposedly sitting in a dark room with nothing, no
sensory deprivation.
Yeah, basically they shoved his food through a little hole in the door and all that other stuff for 4 days. And we're recording here Wednesday night. We have not heard words from the weirdo as he exited his darkness retreat, but I'm sure there will be plenty of it upcoming in the days to come on every major sports network because, of course, they love that garbage. So.
Yeah.
But then we'll move on to some Vikings news. Got a little bit going on this week. First off, came out on Monday, I believe it was, that the Vikings are parting ways with linebackers coach Greg Minuski, which not a big, huge surprise there that with Flores coming in, he's going to want his own guys to do his own stuff. So, wish Minuski well in his future endeavors as he'll catch on someplace else, I'm sure.
Bid you farewell.
Yeah. Then Tuesday, Patrick Peterson's contract officially voided out, making him an unrestricted free agent. Could sign with anybody he wants right now. Leaves $750,000 a dead cap on the books right now, so not terrible.
Right.
Door's not completely shut on him coming back, although I don't know that he fits into Flores' defensive scheme all that well anymore. But
you got to cut 5 years off of that. Mm-hmm. Get back into the 20s, but it's not possible.
Yeah. So I mean, we'll see what happens. Like I said, it's possible he returns. I don't think it's all that likely, but
right.
Then another contract that was supposed to have voided on Tuesday as well was Delvin Tomlinson. Was going to count $7.5 million in dead money against the cap. Now, it came out on Wednesday that Tomlinson and the Vikings agreed to push that void date back to March 15th, which is the start of the free agency period. So if they can come to a new deal between now and then, it'll drop that $7.5 million dead hit down to $2.5 million, which to me makes it seem like the Vikings would like to try to bring him back again.
That's what makes the most sense to me.
Yep. And I'm fine with bringing him back. He played pretty well, and there was a noticeable drop-off in the run defense when he was not in there.
Yeah, he actually came on pretty strong this season, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I know I wasn't exactly sold on him last offseason, but he played well enough. And,
right, because like you said, you could see the drop in play when he wasn't in there, so, I mean, that says enough.
And our defensive line depth isn't that great as it sits right now anyway, so a good player, if we can keep him at a reasonable price, I'm all for it. So
Speaking of keeping players, Rhino, we also re-signed Kairos Tonga this last week as well.
Yes, we also did. Glad to see that.
Which is the move I was happy to see him as well.
Yeah. Now, can we do better than Tonga as a full-time starter? Absolutely, we can.
He's good depth, though. He provides really good depth on that defensive line. He
is good depth, and he realistically at the moment is the closest thing to a true nose tackle that we have. I mean, we had Harrison Phillips playing nose tackle most of the year, and Phillips is not a nose tackle.
And you know what? Tonga's still young, so, I mean, who's to say that he hasn't, hit his peak as far as his potential goes?
Yep. And also on the same vein, Tonga was an exclusive rights free agent, as was Blake Brandel, who we also brought back too. So,
right. There you go.
So we got a couple of our free agents taken care of. Very minimal deals on both of them. So team-friendly stuff.
Yeah.
Good depth, if nothing else, which you need to have. And
yes,
I was.
And time in the system goes a long way as well when it comes to bringing the rookies and the guys that haven't been here later on in the offseason. That's great to have too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, now as far as Tonga, like I said, he's a good space eater up in the middle there. We'll see how he works in Flores'
his
defense.
Run stopping ability is really underrated, in my opinion.
Yeah, it is, and you could see from the time he got here till the end of the season, he was developing.
Yeah.
And getting more playing time. So.
Yep.
But anyway, I guess that's most of the news. Kind of, I guess, a couple interesting things. There was some of the players that are, draft eligible for the NFL draft this year were drafted by the upstart USFL. Quarterback Malik Cunningham was one notable one that I saw on Wednesday. Now, these guys are still eligible to be drafted by the NFL. So,
the 7-year starter at Minnesota, go for Tanner Morgan himself.
Tanner Morgan, too, yeah, who's, I think, is like a year and a half younger than me. But
yeah, that's why I said 7-year starter.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I forget
there in Minnesota.
Yeah, I forget where Morgan went to, but I really don't
remember either. It was a U.S.
Morgan wasn't going to get drafted in the NFL, I don't think, anyway. So,
and if he did, it would be a late round flyer, in my opinion. He would imagine
unrestricted free agent. I kind of figured, but if he can go to the XF or the USFL or wherever he's going,
good for him, absolutely,
and show out. More power to him. Same thing with Malik Cunningham.
Yep.
He's a guy we saw at the Senior Bowl. Very electric on it with his feet, but he's got very piss poor mechanics as far as I'm concerned. I know our buddy Drew had mentioned that in our Gallahorn group that we're a part of too today. That
in my opinion, mechanics is huge when it comes to the quarterback position. It's huge.
Yep. Malik Cunningham, to me, is a worse version of Lamar Jackson, because at least Lamar Jackson can has relatively decent mechanics and has gotten better and can throw the ball. Cunningham, basically, if anybody drafted Cunningham and made him, and he had to play right away, you would basically have to do with him like what the Bears did with Justin Fields this year and run him 90% of the time.
Gotcha.
But anyway, we did the quarterback stuff a couple weeks ago, so we'll move on here. This week we have the wide receiver breakdown. Of course, a lot of interesting scenarios that'll be coming forth here in the next few weeks for the Vikings with their wide receiver group. Of course, top of that pile is one Justin Jefferson. Jefferson is now entering his 4th year, so they are able to start negotiating on a long-term extension with him.
Yep.
Of course, they will have the 5th-year option for him next year, which, from everything I've been seeing on a contract, if they do sign him to an extension, he'll play through that 5th year, and then the extension will kick in after that.
That's wise.
Yeah, and I mean, the 5th-year option next year is going to pay him probably about $20 million. So
right.
I think it's like that 5th-year option this year is like 18 to 19 million. So expected to go up a little bit next year.
Yeah.
But probably the 800-pound gorilla in the room is what the Vikings are going to do about one Adam Thielen.
I don't, as a lot of us fans think as well. I mean, there's those fans that always want everybody, that we talked about last week, that always want everybody to play every single year for their whole entire career in Minnesota. But I have a hard time seeing Thielen here next season, honestly.
I do too. I mean, there's been talk, and
I don't want him here, but I think his time here has come to. If there's going to be a time for him to go, now would be the time before it gets sour, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. And honestly,
fresh start is good for both sides.
I mean, Adam Thielen cannot play in a $19 million cap hit next year. There's no way.
Right. It would for me require a restructure of some sort as well.
It's not even a restructure. It's got to be a pay cut, because a restructure is just going to kick that money down the road.
That's
and
true.
I have been on record on this show pretty much every week on how opposed I am to this kicking the can down the road bullshit that we've been doing.
Because it fucks the salary cut later on.
Right.
Future years.
Yeah, and you're paying all this dead money to somebody who's not even on your team anymore.
Right.
You know, and we talked about this last year, that restructuring deal that we did with Thielen last year was a bad idea. But nobody expected Thielen to fall off as much as he did this season either. So, but even if the Vikings and the Thielen camp come to some sort of agreement that on a pay cut that keeps him here, Adam Thielen is not a wide receiver 2 anymore.
No, so he's primarily slot is where I'd be popping him.
Yeah, but he's a 3 at best. I mean, with the players on this team right now, he's a 3 behind
And by
Osborne.
all means, Osborne deserves his shot at the number 2 spot.
But
at this point in Osborne's career and Thielen's career, it's come to the point where Osborne deserves an honest shot at that number 2 wide receiver spot, in my opinion.
But I get what you're saying on that. But to me, Osborne is not a wide receiver 2 either. He hasn't proven that yet anyway. He's a wide receiver 3, and he's a good wide receiver 3.
I agree, Rhino, but I believe just for respect, O'Connell will give him that opportunity to prove that he deserves to be a number 2 receiver.
Well, and that
brings somebody in here that just totally blows everybody away.
And having that opportunity, fine. But we've talked about it. I am not one bit opposed to drafting a wide receiver in the first round this year. And we'll talk about some of the guys here in just a minute. But
right.
So one of the other guys that we have something to decide what we're going to do with is one Jalen Reagor.
Got bait. Let him go. Fuck it.
Yeah, I
didn't do enough this past year, and the opportunities he was given to impress me much.
No, he did. I mean, he gave up on that. What was it? The Indy game when he was directly responsible for 2 interceptions because he stopped on one route and went the wrong way on another one.
Interception. Yeah.
Yep. So led to 2 interceptions because he didn't play out the routes like he was supposed to. And I'm not a fan of him as a punt returner because he seems like he runs backwards more than he runs forwards. He had 1 or 2 long punt or decently long punt returns this year.
Right. Yep. We need to find somebody at the punt return position for sure.
Mm-hmm. Then of course,
not that you can't find somebody on the roster already, but somebody that brings more to the table than Reagor does.
Yep.
Because at this point, in my opinion, he's just wasting a roster spot.
Absolutely. I don't want I would rather keep Thielen around than Reagor.
And that's telling you enough right there.
But, and again, to the Vikings fans out there who, we can't get rid of Adam Thielen because he's one of us, yada, yada, yada. I don't hate Adam Thielen. I love Adam Thielen. I've always been a big Adam Thielen fan, but this is a business. We have to do what's best for the team, not what's best.
And talent doesn't stay with the person forever as far as physical talent goes.
No. And when you're trying to win a Super Bowl, the name on the back of the jersey does not matter. It's the logo on the shoulder.
I would have loved to have gotten a ring in his time here, but it's just
absolutely
played out.
Yep.
So,
but then the one other guy we have basically right now on the main roster is Jalen Naylor, who
I am excited for this kid. I really am. I got a gut feeling about this kid that he's gonna surprise a lot of people next season.
He showed out, in his limited playing time.
I did not like about the kid this season.
Granted, a lot of what he played in was garbage time and stuff like that, like the Bears game at the end of the season that didn't matter. Green Bay when we were getting our.
You can't fake quickness in garbage time either.
No, and he was still running the right routes and he was doing that stuff, and
still catching the ball like he should.
Yeah, and a lot of those was coming from Nick Mullins. It wasn't coming from Kirk either.
Well next season, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think so too. But so now we look ahead to some of the potential free agent signings or free agents that are out here for the wide receiver position.
Oh, we're not going to talk about Blake Prohl?
He's still on the roster, but he's a practice squad guy right now.
I know. All respect Blake Prohl.
So is Tristan Jackson and a couple other guys down there too. Dan Chisena and now I'm going to preface.
He's been on this roster forever.
Yeah.
But anyways, moving along.
Moving on to the free agents. Now I'm going to preface this with saying I don't want to spend free agent money on a wide receiver. I would rather draft a young guy in the draft and develop them rather than overpaying for one of these guys. the big name guys that are out there include the likes of Nelson Aguilar, who I wouldn't give a plug nickel for.
No.
One that's been rumored to the Vikings more than once, former Jaguar and last year with the Detroit Lions, DJ Chark.
And like I said before in a previous episode, I'd be okay with that. Just, bring him in and get a look at him. But the question, and the biggest question is to everyone is can the dude play all 17 games of the season?
Well, and the problem with bringing him in to take a look is you're going to have to pay him $11, $12 million a year probably to do so.
It's possible, yeah.
That's about what according to Spot Track last time I checked, that's kind of about where his market value is rolling in that I've seen as low as like.
I'm telling you, you're better off going and getting somebody in the draft.
Right. Especially this year when we're dealing with cap issues.
Develop your talent that you have on your roster already.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways.
Right. Then also Sterling Shepard, who has played with the Giants, widely disappointing. There again, want nothing to do with him.
The thing with the receivers, every year they're getting older as well. A lot of these free agents, it works. Different positions, the ages, the correlation between the ages and the position is different with every position in the NFL.
Right.
Yeah.
Then another one that I've seen 30, a lot of the.
Once you hit 30 at wide receiver, yep. That's what I'm getting at.
Right.
Running back, 28, 29 is getting to be kind of an older running back, So, anyways.
Yes.
I explained myself.
Okay. We're glad you cleared that up for us there, bro.
Yep.
Another one that a lot of the clickbait media sites are linking to the Vikings is Packers wide receiver Allen Lazard. Now, here's another one. He's good. He's going to be up in that $12, $13 million a year range. I don't see any way whatsoever that we would be paying him that kind of money to come in.
He's a good player.
Yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, he'd be a perfectly fine number 2 wide receiver to Justin Jefferson. That'd be a pretty good duo.
He's a better version of Chase Claypool in my book.
He's faster than Claypool and not
right. Better version of Chase Claypool, I believe.
I mean, I like Lazard, even though he played for Green Bay, but I don't want to bring him in here.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Another one is Jacoby Myers from New England. Another one, no real interest in. And then the other big name that potentially is going to be available is Juju Smith-Schuster.
He'd be already on his third team, so right there's a red flag in its own right.
Mm-hmm.
Is Brandon Cooks a free agent? Speaking of being on his third, fourth, fifth, sixth team, is Brandon Cooks a free agent this year?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
He wasn't on the list anyway, so I mean he was a discussion of a trade thing.
And that dude, wherever he plays good. So that's one.
He does, but he's had injury problems, and he's getting up there in age and stuff too. And yep. I don't, like I said, I don't want to bring in an old vet wide receiver. I want to get somebody new.
Yeah, especially
somebody young.
You want somebody with those young, fast legs, man.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And that's the thing. We need a deep threat that can take the top off on the other side of Justin Jefferson. You get those guys opening that up. You got Hawkinson in the middle, taking up the middle space. You start doing that kind of stuff, and you're going to open up.
You got Jefferson. You got Jefferson being meticulous with his routes and running his routes, and then you get all you got to do is be able to get somebody that's going to run a straight line down the field, really, really fucking fast, and that would complement. What Hawkinson and Jefferson got going on.
We need somebody. We need more than a guy that can just run down the field fast. We've tried those guys many times, Troy Williamson and a bunch of others. But looking at the
draft is what we need.
Right, looking at the draft, there is a lot of wide receivers. It's kind of a top heavy wide receiver draft. It doesn't seem to be as deep of a wide receiver draft as it has been the last couple of years. But some of the guys that are showing up in that first round or two that could be potential targets Quentin Johnson from TCU. Now, most places I've seen have him coming as the first wide receiver off the board.
Okay.
So very doubtful he's still available when it comes down to us. Hell of a player, though. Zay Flowers from Boston College. This guy, he's going to be available right around in that area. I've seen him anywhere from the late teens into the early second round. They're, again, a guy with speed and pretty good with his routes and everything else. One I've been seeing a lot in our area is Jordan Addison out of USC. Now, he's a guy that I would definitely consider at 23 if he's sitting there. Another one out of the University of North Carolina, Josh Downs. Again, a very speedy guy, really good with his routes. These guys, most of these guys up in the top in this list are good route runners. They've got good speed. One thing I have noticed in looking at a lot of them, this seems to be a shorter wide receiver class than years. There's not a lot of these 6'5" guys with a lot of burning speed. There's a lot of 5'10" to 6'1" guys. So a little bit smaller, but they're good route runners and they can run. Some of those
small guys can play big though too.
Oh, absolutely.
So
another guy that will be around in that area, Jackson Smith and Jigba from Ohio State. Now, we've talked about him in the past. To me, he projects out to be more of a slot guy. He's not a burner. He's one of these few guys that isn't on that side. Now, if you remember, especially from the 2021 season, when you still had Olave and everybody else at Ohio State, and Jigba did very well. I mean, he was catching a lot of balls, but just something about him, it doesn't seem to me like would be a good fit for what we're going to be looking for. The next guy on the list, Kayshon Boutte out of LSU. I mean, we need to draft him just for the simple fact of his last name, but because
that and LSU was wide receiver university, man. So
yeah, not LSU, but then
LSU.
What?
What's up?
I said
LSU turns on a lot of good receivers.
Well, yeah, of course we've got one on that already here, but the thing that would be best about it though is if you call a play specifically for him in the offense, then that would be a booty call.
That's what she said.
Another one that's shown out. He didn't have much of a chance before this year, but when he got his opportunity, he made the most of it. Jalen Hyatt out of Tennessee. He didn't play the full season as a starter. He started off as like the number 4 wide receiver, but then due to injuries, got his chance in the sun, and he made the most out of it. Definitely a guy I'd take a look at. Then another one a little bit later on that I would consider Raheem Jarrett out of Maryland. Watched a little bit of tape on this kid. He's got some good moves and decent speed. So, I mean, if we don't take a guy early, he would be one mid-round maybe that we could take a look at. Yeah. But that's, I guess, kind of the breakdown of who's there, who's what, and whatnot. What do you think on this wide receiver stuff? I mean, we kind of went through all this, but
I would like to rather see us take somebody in the later round, something that we have actually done some work on that might fall into the 3rd, 4th, 5th round area. And I mean, I would much rather do that than draft receiver in the 1st round, in my opinion. So.
Fair enough.
I think there's enough talent on this roster right now to get us through another season where we would need to draft another receiver. So, and on that note, it would give the talent that's on this roster another chance to show what they got.
Yeah, and I don't dispute that fact, but I also don't want to pin hopes on people showing what they got. If we can improve at the position, one of
I'd
these
like
guys
to get his Robin, to his Batman, but
right.
We'll see.
The sooner we can get that Robin to his Batman, the better off we're going to be. So
like a Marvin Harrison, fucking Reggie Wayne type of combination, or a Randy Moss and
Chris Carter
combination.
Right.
It's been a while since the league's had a good combination of receivers, like as far as names go, that high.
Yeah.
Play wise, anyways, 2 receivers on one team. I mean, I like T. Higgins and some Jamar Chase down there, and Cincinnati and Tyler Boyd. You throw him in there too, but
since he's got it, Miami's got it with Waddle and Tyreek Hill. But so I mean, I'm not opposed to taking a wide receiver early. I know a lot of people. Well, we can't. We got to go defense. Got to go defense. Yeah, we need defense, but when you start drafting from need over who the best players are available, especially if it's a position that you do need to upgrade at, you pigeonhole yourself, and then we end up with Rick Spielman type drafts. So
a lot more than I would the offense. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so, but for me, all options are on the table when that first round rolls around. Whether it be, and we'll talk about this down the road when we get into the defense.
More picks.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's a legitimate possibility. But
I've heard fans say, "Well, that's what we do all the time." Well, at this point, when you're only looking at 5 picks, and you don't got a second rounder at the moment, it's not a bad idea to especially if we could fleece somebody and get a good deal. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah. But I mean, okay, we don't have a second rounder right now. Basically, we could consider TJ Hawkinson as our second round pick this year, which
that by all means it paid off this season. So I look for Hawkinson to get even better next season after 1 year in this, offense.
Yeah, and if you can get a guy like TJ Hawkinson as a second round pick, you take that every day of the freaking week. So
and he's still young. I mean,
he's what is he, 25, 26, something like that?
He's that player that's going to be going into his second contract, and that's right around the time where you want to get a guy.
Mm-hmm. All right. So with that, we are going to roll into another one of our classic beer commercials. So head yourself on over the fridge, grab yourself a cold one, crack it open, check this out, and we will be back in a minute.
Honking fish out there. They call them big honking fish. Slightly bigger than a weasel, a touch smaller than... I had him once. Thought maybe he had me. Then he came up, swallowed my whole cooler. Oh!
That's one big fat fish that got more of what he wanted from a beer. Ice House is ice brewed, so there's never any watered down taste.
Tell us another one, Lou. No.
Thanks, and enjoy.
Fucking Ice House, man. Holy shit. That's to put some hair on your balls.
Yeah, or burn it off, one or the other. Hey,
that's like some 8% shit right there.
Yeah, not exactly the champagne of beers, but hey, we've done 100 episodes or 99 episodes where the beer commercials. We're gonna have to come up with something different here pretty soon.
Maybe we'll get a craft beer sponsor.
That'd be nice if anybody out there that owns a craft brewery that would like to sponsor the show.
Anything.
Yeah, anybody that wants to sponsor our show, send us an instant message. We would love to talk to you, and we will plaster your logo all over our background here. So
we will facialize our background with your shit.
So keep that in mind. But
that's right.
Especially if it's a beer company, because we like beer.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. We're back, I guess. And we've reached the point in the show again for this week's edition of the Mock Draft Roundup.
Keep rolling, rolling, rolling. Though the streams are swollen. Keep them doggies rolling right.
All right, so now we will go to the magic of StreamYard once again and pop up this week's list. Couple of different names on here from last week, some of the same again. Starting off with Nolan Smith, the edge rusher out of Georgia, mocked to us by Nate Davis of USA Today. Now Smith, I haven't done a whole lot of research on him yet, I guess, so I can't really speak to him. Seems to be a guy that's moving up the boards a little bit. You know, a couple weeks ago, I didn't see his name anywhere, but now I've seen it pop up a few times. So,
I mean, we could use the splash player on the edge. There's, I mean,
well, yeah,
getting better pass rush.
No, and especially if Zadarius Smith isn't back.
Right.
Then the next one on the list, for the second week in a row, Keith Sanchez from the Draft Network gives us center John Michael Schmitz out of Minnesota.
Well, holy Schmitz.
Now, go ahead.
I don't know how I feel about drafting a center in the first round again, especially when you can wait until later in the draft to possibly get that center out of Michigan later on. So I don't know, you know.
Yeah, there's a handful of guys that I would like as an option in the mid rounds. You got the kid out of Michigan. You've got the Wisconsin kid. There's what's his name? Juice Davis, I think his name is, out of Penn State.
You know, and if
also,
we do draft interior linemen, it's going to be a center, I believe, in my opinion.
Yeah, it will be. But those guys are all mid round picks, and
it'd be nice to get a nice 8 to 10 years stalwart.
Mm-hmm.
And can plug up that middle of that line.
Right. But like you said, though, I think we can get a quality starter, third, fourth round. We don't need to. Now, I mean, John Michael Schmitz is.
That's not a knock on Schmitz at all.
No, he's a very good center, and most likely will be the number one center to come out of this class. I like the kid. I've watched a few. Don't watch every Gophers game, but I've watched a few of them, and I watched this kid at the Senior Bowl, and he showed out. He's got a mean streak, which is something that we need. But I'm with you. I don't know that drafting a center in the first round is the best decision we can make, I guess. Then the next guy, also for the
draft board pretty quickly, this guy is. Yeah.
For the second week in a row, again, Charlie Campbell from Walter Football is mocking us Henry To'o, the linebacker out of Alabama.
Alabama produces a lot of good linebackers.
Mm-hmm.
They do.
And I've watched a little tape on this kid. I think he would probably fit pretty well in a Flores defense. He's kind of, depending upon which draft board you look at, he's in that late first to mid second round, somewhere in there. So I see him maybe as
I would like you could trade back, maybe you get that second round pick, and then go from there. And then I don't know. I believe he's somebody you could get at the top of the second round.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I don't know that I take him at 23, but if we trade back and stuff, then it definitely puts him in play, I think.
Yeah.
Then the next one, Keely Ringo, cornerback out of Georgia, mocked to us by Ryan Wilson from CBS Sports and the Tankathon staff mock this week.
I mean, we got a young room of corners.
But there's a lot of question marks to it now.
That's absolutely true. That is absolutely true.
You know, cornerback seems to be the trendy pick again this year for the Vikings.
I would honestly, I'd rather go out and get a young corner in the free agency that kind of like we did with Shelley, you know, but maybe a little bit more of a more known than Shelley was when we got him, you know.
Yep. And that's the thing, you know, as much as I don't want to bring in a free agent wide receiver, I think if we're going to be bringing in any free agent players, cornerback is probably the one to do it. And there are some guys out there that have worked, with Flores before. Sutton from Pittsburgh is one guy that has been talked about a little bit. So
I would rather bring in a free agent than draft a corner in the first round, in my opinion.
I would agree. Now, that being said, there are a couple of very good cornerbacks in the first round that if they fall to us, you got to look at them real hard. The next two on our list here are two of them. Devin Witherspoon, cornerback out of Illinois. He was mocked to us by Kent Platt of the Pro Football Network and Dave Zagaro of NBC Sports. Witherspoon, I've seen him be the first cornerback off the board, and I've seen him at the end of the first round, early second round. So, just like a lot of these guys right now, they move up and down week to week depending upon who's looking at them. So
you're absolutely right, yeah.
The next guy, another one that's consensus on most boards, top 3-4 cornerbacks, is Cam Smith out of South Carolina. Another very good player, I think, would fit the system pretty well. But here again, it's, everybody wants to mock cornerbacks to the Vikings. I don't know that I'm.
And it's easy to see why they would do that too.
Oh, it is. It is.
This quarterback room has a lot to prove next season, going into next year, and I think it's going to be better than this past season. It needs to be better.
Really can't be much worse. So.
Exactly, and I think you got Shelley, who's an up and comer. He's getting his confidence going on this team.
Provided we re-sign Shelley, because he is an unrestricted free agent.
I would hope so. I would hope that it would be the case.
I would think, he's got to be one of the priorities of re-signing. So,
and he, in my opinion, is going to be one of those players that's going to be a good leader, a good locker room guy. So.
Yeah, I think so too. Because still plays with a chip on his shoulder, got something to prove. So I think
Yep, and he's exciting to watch too, in my opinion, in a way.
Yeah,
just like we scattered, but the way that he, like I mentioned earlier in the cast about receivers playing bigger, he plays bigger than what he is at that position that he plays.
Yeah, and we talked about this, during the season. The kid has some shades of Antoine Winfield to him. And we're not the only people that have mentioned that. I've heard that talked about in other places.
And when he makes plays on the field, the team rallies around that. And they did that this year. And it was fun to see.
Yeah.
So anyways, moving along to Miles Murphy out of Clemson here.
Yes. Murphy was mocked to us by the 33rd team staff, which, of course, consists of people with the likes of Rick Spielman and others. So if Spielman's mocking him to us, that's going to push me away from wanting to take him just for that simple fact. Next guy on the list, Emmanuel Forbes, cornerback out of Mississippi State. Another guy that's been kind of climbing up the draft boards a bit. This is the second.
Josh's review on him last week, it's down in the comments, is pretty much a raving review of this guy. It's pretty glowing. So,
Garrett Podell from CBS Sports mocked him to us. Daniel Jeremiah from the NFL Network mocks us Deonte Banks, cornerback out of Maryland.
Once again, we discussed our feelings on that anyways.
Of course, Daniel Jeremiah is one of the big dogs when it comes to who's who of NFL mock drafts. But we've already talked at length about drafting cornerbacks, so I don't think we need to dive into it too much.
Exactly. Yep.
The next guy on here,
we kind of talked about it already today too, a little bit.
Yeah, we talked about him earlier. I personally would pass on him. Jackson Smith and Jigba, wide receiver from Ohio State. Chris Trapasso from CBS Sports mocks him to us this week. I think he may have also – he was mocked to us last week, and I think it was Trapasso that did it then too. But Then a new one this week. Luke Van Ness, the edge rusher out of Iowa, mocked to us by Kevin Fielder from the Vikings Wire. Works with our buddy Tyler Fornes over there.
Lots of edge, corner, receiver this week, huh?
Mm-hmm.
One linebacker.
And one center.
Defense rules all this week, pretty much. Looks like.
Which, again, is an easy pick if you're mocking to the Vikings as poor as our defense was last year.
Yeah. Shit show.
Yeah.
But we managed to win 13 games, which is nice. So that gives us hope for next year.
It doesn't matter how many people say we were frauds or any of that stuff like that. We don't have to give any of those 13 games or wins back. So
exactly.
But that does it for this week's mock draft roundup. So with that, we have once again reached the best segment of our program.
You're too nice. You're too nice.
As we take a look at those to wear number 99 for this week's edition of Brunswick's Best. So why don't you
roll that beautiful bean footage
and tell us who you got on your list this week?
Well. As far as wearing the number 99 for the purple and gold, 3 names come to mind. And we will start with the man who put the number on a map here in Minnesota with an underappreciated, not talked enough about, Mr. Al Noga. Now, Al arrived here out of Hawaii in the 3rd round of the 1988 NFL Draft. Though Al only played in 9 games with 1 start as a rookie, however, the following season, Mr. Noga was unleashed, picking up 11.5 sacks from the left defensive end spot. Often an overlooked man on a defensive line that featured players the likes of Chris Dolman, Keith Millard, and the man we just talked about a couple episodes back in Hardware Hank Henry Thomas himself. Noga was a man looking to prove himself and a player you didn't want to be standing in the way of. In that 1989 season, for a Vikings team that racked up a total of 71 sacks, Noga collected 29.5 sacks in his first 5 seasons with Minnesota. After that, he moved on to the Washington Redskins and the Indianapolis Colts before winding up in the Arena Football League. Aloha, Al. Thanks for the work that you put in while wearing the purple and gold, and for that, you made the list this week. Now, coming up next is a man that came out swinging and then became a magician, disappearing from relevance as quickly as he rose the ranks of his position. Now, granted, he is worth a spot on Brunswick's Best, and that man is none other than Chris Hovan. Chris was taken by the Vikings in the 2000 NFL Draft. He was a first-round selection out of Boston College. Hovan manned the middle of the defensive line for the Vikings from 2000 until 2004. He was fairly productive with the Vikings through his first 3 seasons, with the team being named to the NFL's All-Rookie Team in 2000. He followed that up with his best seasons for the Vikings in 2001 and 2002, when he collected a combined 11.5 sacks. However, Hovan really never had the sort of career that you would have hoped a first-round selection would have had. In his last 2 seasons with the team, he was fairly unproductive, and honestly, it was quite embarrassing. I remember him having multiple games in the 2 years where he was here and started, then he would just disappear for entire games. Now, after his 5th season with the team, Hovan took his show down to Tampa Bay before finding his way out of the league after 5 seasons with the Bucks as well. Here a while back, we had a segment called Where Are They Now?, in which we featured Mr. Hovan himself. And let's just say his playing days, probably his best days. I'm not sure which episode it is that we took that dive, but it's in our catalog somewhere. Anyways, for your first few years with the team that you gave you enough credit, Mr. Hovan, you made the list. Moving along to a player that is relevant right now in this very moment, as we speak, or as I speak, and that man is Mr. Danielle Hunter. Since bursting onto the scene in 2015 out of LSU, this third-round gem has blossomed into one of the league's premier pass rushers. As a rookie in 2015, Hunter was the youngest player in the NFL, but quickly managed to earn a rotational role on defense and finished second among all rookies that year on the Vikings in sacks in the entire league with sacks with 6. In his first career start, Hunter had 4 tackles, half a sack, and was credited with a forced fumble in the Vikings' 16-10 victory over the Kansas City Chiefs. After finishing his first 2 seasons in Minnesota, Hunter had compiled 18.5 career sacks and 4 games in which he finished the day with at least a sack and a half. Since 1985, only Keith Millard and Kevin Williams registered more sacks than Hunter in their first 2 NFL seasons with the Vikings. Overall, in Danielle's first 5 seasons in the NFL, he was a monster, terrorizing opposing offensive tackles and quarterbacks, setting a pace for himself to destroy long-held records from the defensive ends positions past. Going into the 2020 season, expectations from the fans for Hunter and the defensive line were at a high. Then came the infamous news during training camp about a neck injury, or as Zimmer liked to say, a tweak. On September 9th, 2020, Hunter was placed on injured reserve with a neck injury. He underwent season-ending surgery to clean up a herniated disc in his neck. The following season, in the 2021 season, was the return of the monster, the return of the Hunter, and fans were pumped, myself included. Hunter started off the 2021 campaign on a torrid pace, netting 6 sacks in the first 7 games, until he suffered a season-ending torn pectoral muscle against the Dallas Cowboys, placing him on the injured reserve for the 2nd consecutive season. Now, going into 2022, after 2 seasons in which he only netted 6 games played, along with questions about how Hunter would fit into a 3-4 scheme. And although taking some time, Hunter eventually returned to his former glory this past season, starting all 17 games and posting 10.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble, and 3 passes defensed. And honestly, if utilized in the rush more effectively earlier in the season, he would have had even better numbers this past year.
You mean it wasn't a good idea to be dropping him off in coverage?
Right. As many of you have heard, Rhino and I's justified complaints about having your best edge rusher going back into coverage where he has no business being.
Right.
But enough of that, because the career and legacy that you have built since being taken in the 3rd round 8 years ago, Danielle Hunter, you made the list. And that, my friends, ends this week's segment of Brunswick's Best.
All right. And as that ends this week's segment of Brunswick Best, that also ends this week's episode because that's all we've got for this week. Again, want to thank everybody for watching. As always, if you're out and about, take us with you on whatever audio or video streaming platform you so choose. We are all over the place, not too hard to find us. Again, we are rolling ever closer towards free agency, which will be starting in about 2 weeks, roughly, March 13th, thereabouts, I think 3 weeks maybe. So a lot of news is going to be coming out in the next couple of weeks as we try to get down to where we need to be with the salary cap and all these things that have to be taken care of before the league year starts. So stay tuned. We'll keep you updated on all of that. Next week, we will break down the offensive line position as a group for the team and kind of going from there. We might even throw the tight ends in since really we have Hawkinson and Munt, and that's about it. So we'll
no Brunswick's Best next week because there's no players that were 100.
Right. So we'll do a little extra deep dive into the rest of the stuff. So, but with that, why don't you take us home, Lance?
Nice having you here on Friday night as usual. I hope you all enjoyed the show. I'm excited about the offseason. I'm excited where this direction this team is going. The Flores pickup was huge. This Quessy ceases to amaze me at GM at this point. Let's just hope he keeps the ball rolling in the right direction and we continue to grow, become bigger and better, and bring in some fucking trophies. You know, I'd like to see a trophy here sooner than later.
Right.
So, with that being said, we will see you next week for the centennial episode of Vikings Uncensored. Skull.
Have a good weekend, everybody.